Good morning, friends, and welcome to this special act of remembrance. I invite you to listen to these words as we start this time of remembering and listening to God. As the Father has loved me, so have I loved you. Now remain in my love. If you keep my commandments, you will remain in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commandments and remain in his love. I have told you this so that my joy may be in you and that your joy may be complete. My command is this: love each other as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. You are my friends if you do what I command. I no longer call you servants, because the servant doesn't know his master's business. Instead, I have called you friends, for everything that I have learned from my Father, I have made known to you. You did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you so that you might go and bear fruit, fruit that will last, and so that whatever you ask in my name, the Father will give you. This is my command: love one another.
When I survey the wondrous cross on which the Prince of Glory died, my richest gain I count but loss, and pour content on all my pride. Forbid it, Lord, that I should boast save in the death of Christ my God. All the vain things that charm me most, I sacrifice them to his blood. See from his head, his hands, his feet, sorrow and love flow mingled down. Did e'er such love and sorrow meet, or thorns compose so rich like a robe spreads o'er his body on the tree. Then am I dead to all the globe, and all the globe is dead to me. Were the whole realm of nature mine, that were an offering far too small. Love so amazing, so divine, demands my soul, my life, my own.
When the whole nation had finished crossing the Jordan, the Lord said to Joshua, "Choose 12 men from among the people, one from each tribe, and tell them to take up 12 stones from the middle of the Jordan, from right where the priests are standing, and carry them over with you and put them down at the place where you stay tonight." So Joshua called together the 12 men he had appointed from the Israelites, one from each tribe, and said to them, "Go over before the ark of the Lord your God into the middle of the Jordan. Each of you is to take up a stone on his shoulder, according to the number of the tribes of the Israelites, to serve as a sign among you. In the future, when your children ask you, 'What do these stones mean?' tell them that the flow of the Jordan was cut off before the ark of the covenant of the Lord. When it crossed the Jordan, the waters of the Jordan were cut off. These stones are to be a memorial to the people of Israel forever." Dear friends, memory is an interesting thing. Science tells us that our brain only actively engages with a certain amount of information. Because otherwise, can you imagine remembering clearly every shopping list you ever created? Brain cannot cope with it. And therefore, because it only engages with the things that we are actively remembering, some memory gets fuzzy or lost. The other day we were talking with my family about the Fenwick windows. Fenwick windows have put a display up again, and we were trying to remember what that display was like last year at Christmas time. And none of us could remember. We all agreed that we had been to see it in Newcastle, but none of us remembered what the display looked like. I had a very faint recollection of a mall, but that was as far as it went, because we had not talked about it for a whole year. So then we went back to our photos and we had to look and see what it was. And once we saw the pictures, there was triggering of memories and something came back to us. And I'm sure you have those same experiences as well. Sometimes you meet a friend and they mention something that you did together, and you look at them blankly and go, "What? I've got no recollection of this. I've got no memory of this." And then you share some more, or your friend talks some more about that special time or memory. And then you remember, you start remembering. In the sharing, in the active remembering, things start to come back to you because you're sharing it with somebody. Today is a day of remembering. And I'd like us to think about this active remembering, because it's very important and it is something that we should be doing today. And active remembering is important, especially today, for several reasons. First of all, active remembering is a time to pause and reflect. In our Bible reading earlier on, the Israelites have just crossed the Jordan and they've got a million things to do. Where they're going to stay, what they're going to eat, how they're going to help those who don't have food. A million things to do. They're busy. And yet in the midst of this busyness and all these important things that they have to do, God says to them, I would like you to carry a rock and go to the middle of the river and place it down, one for each tribe. Stop what you're doing. I would like you to do this thing for me, to build a cairn or an altar, something about remembering God at work at this point in time. They didn't say, no, we've got other things to do. They went and did it. They created this altar. And in that process, I wonder if they were remembering and thinking of what God had done for them. And that altar maybe remained there for years to come so that others could remember too. And there are other stories in the Bible that talk about altars and talk about people placing stone upon stone upon stone as an act of active remembering. Do you remember? I'm going to play with your memory now. Do you remember the city of cairns or altars that appeared on the Whitley Bay beach just over there last year? It was last year, wasn't it? Yeah, at the beginning of the lockdown and the pandemic. It's no longer there because now, even though people still walk on the beach, they walk on the beach to walk a dog or for exercise or for fresh air, but they're busy. They do the walking and the reflecting just by walking. They go back home to their busy lives. Last year, everything was closed. People had time and people were less busy, if you like, so they walked to their families and they decided to take it slowly. They decided to stop and take time to place one stone on top of the other, to reflect on life and priorities and what was happening around them. Active remembering invites us to pause and reflect. Later on, we're going to hold our 2 minutes silence and we'll do some reflecting then, but I wonder if the 2 minutes is not enough. And I wonder if we're invited to pause more and reflect more. It's been a year since we last remembered the heroes who fell in the wars. And I wonder if we've forgotten what we have been given. I wonder if we've taken for granted the freedoms and the human rights we have today. I wonder if we've forgotten the mistakes of the past. And I wonder if this is the time to actually pause and reflect, because the remembering will help our present and our future. And maybe if you you don't have to live by the coast, wherever you go for a walk, maybe you pick up a stone and start building a little altar where you go for your walk, and take the time to pause and reflect, not only on what we're doing today, but on life and on the presence of God in your life. For active remembering is not just a time to pause and reflect, it's an act of intimacy. You know those words that Jesus speaks in the very beginning about loving one another? about reminding us of the great sacrifice that one can give by giving their life for another human being. Now, those words were said during Jesus' last meal on earth with his friends. And Jesus knows that come tomorrow, his friends are going to be a bit shocked and surprised and confused. And when Jesus goes from them, they will feel a bit directless, without purpose. They'll try to go back to their old ways. They might forget. And Jesus doesn't want them to forget the intimacy that he has with them, for that continues even when Jesus leaves this earth. So Jesus says, as they have this meal, he says, whenever you eat and whenever you drink, remember me. Remember this time of intimacy, the time when we talked together and laughed together and cried together, the time when I washed your feet, the time when I told you to love each other, the time when I told you to live life to the full, the time when I've told you that you should have my joy and you are my joy. I want you to remember it, and not once a year or at Christmas or Easter or even once a week. Every time you eat and you drink. And as humans, we cannot survive without food and without drink. So we're invited to do this every single day, more than once, to engage with the active remembering of God being present in our lives, God taking an interest, God sitting at the table with us, God loving us always. Today, as we remember the fallen ones, we engage into an act of intimacy as well, as we honor and celebrate their lives. But active remembering is more than that as well. It is a communal act. We don't do it just for our sake, we do it for the sake of others. As we said in the beginning, it's in the conversation with a friend that we start remembering those things we had lost. We remember the past, the wars, because we want to honor others. But we remember so that we can tell stories to other generations, so that the other generations do not forget what's gone before. So that the other generations know that these freedoms we have are freedoms that are very precious and we cannot let them go. But this communal act of remembering is not just about your church or my church, your circuit if you're a Methodist, your town, your region, or even your country, or even just the UK. Because I wonder if you've ever thought, I wonder how she leads us in this act of remembering when she was not born in this country. But dear friends, wars affect more than one country, more than one person. Today we remember the First and the Second World War, and there we have it in the name. These were world wars, and many countries and many cultures have been affected by those. And many countries and many cultures remember. They set aside a day in the year to remember those who gave their lives for all we have today. Some call them heroes, others call them martyrs, others just call them simple people. Some call the day of remembering the day that put aside Memorial Day, others the Martyrs' Day, others Remembrance Day. Every culture, every country is invited to remember, because we need together, collectively, share what's gone before us. Together, collectively. And you know, in every country and in every culture, there is, not in every, I'm not generalizing, in most countries, according to my research, there is a monument maybe of the unknown soldier, or a tomb of the unknown warrior. We have one of those in this country. The remains of a British soldier who has been buried is in Westminster Abbey on the west end of it. And I'm going to share the inscription with you on the screen. And as you can see from it, this points to the fact that he is as important as kings and queens, even though we don't know the name or the rank. It points to the fact that this sacrificial love has come from the most unexpected places, from farmers and builders and factory workers and office workers, common people, simple people just like you and I. And within that inscription there are some texts, and one of those texts says, "For there is no greater love than for one to give their life for another." The text we heard in the very beginning. Text that points to what Jesus does for each and every one of us so that we can have life and life to the fullest. This active remembering needs to be done as a communal act throughout the world, so that we do not let greed or the ideology of one person prevail again, so that we do not fight against others because they look different to us, but we just rejoice and celebrate in diversity, so that we speak up for those with no voice, so that there is no more war and no more conflict and no more hate. We need to remember together the devastating power of war and the power of love and peace. On that last meal, Jesus repeatedly said, "Love one another, love each other, love one another." When we love, then we do not seek to get ourselves richer or take more land from other people or become rulers over others. When we love, we want the best for the other. So I wonder, dear friends, if today this is what we are invited to do, to actively remember, to pause and reflect, to know the intimacy of remembering, to do it together so that we have greater gratitude for all that has been given to us, so that this active remembering informs the choices we make and shapes the future that is to come as we become better stewards of this world God has given us. Amen.
I will speak out for those who have no voices. I will stand up for the rights of all the oppressed. I will speak truth and justice. I'll defend the poor and the needy. I will lift up the weak in Jesus' name. I will speak out for those who have no choices. I will cry out for those who live without love. I will show God's compassion to the crushed, the broken in spirit. I will live
Dear friends, as we all know, on the 11th of November 1918, the First World War was officially over. But it took a few more months for the peace treaty to be signed in June 1919, when victory parades took place across the country. But some, wounded, hurt, with family members who had gone to war and never returned, could not join those celebrations. They didn't think this was a time of celebrating. They believed this was a time of remembering the thousands who gave up their lives for our freedom. On the 11th of November, 1919, the Manchester Guardian ran the headline, "Today is Peace Day." And therefore the gathering was not a glorification of war. It was a space in which people remembered, with tears in their eyes, thankful for what was given to them, but with tears in their eyes. Between 1919 and 1920, the cenotaph was erected, and hundreds gathered to lay wreaths, to remember, and people dressed in black as for a funeral. For this was a time of active remembering, a time of intimacy, a time of pausing and reflecting. So people bowed their heads and they remembered 2 minutes across the country in a time of no Facebook or Twitter. And yet everything stopped. Buses and trains stopped, electricity was cut so trams couldn't run. Workers in hospitals and schools stopped what they were doing. Court proceedings came to a standstill. The stock exchange stopped working. Everybody stopped to remember and to honor for 2 minutes. And at this time, as we prepare to do the same, we are called to remember those who have died in times and places of war throughout history. We remember those who willingly fought, those who fought despite their doubts, and those who were forced to fight. Those who are labeled heroes or martyrs, those whose names remain unknown, and those who were labeled cowards. Those who did not fight but served alongside the soldier and sailor and aircrew, the nurses, the doctors, the chaplains, the clerks. Those who stayed at home but helped by working or feeding or providing. Those who did not fight and yet still died in homes, in workplaces, in prisons of many kinds. Those whom we call friends and those whom we call enemies. Those known to us personally and those whose names remain unknown to all but God. They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them. when you go home, tell them of us and say, for there tomorrow we gave our today. Amen.
Made in perfect love, innocent, we walked as friends of God. Still we turned away, traded freedom for a life enslaved. Helpless we were lost, heaven sent the rescue plan of God. Through the love of Christ, we are found and born into new life. We are watching, we are waiting, we are hoping, we are praying, we're believing, let your kingdom come. Father in heaven, your name is holy, yours is the kingdom, the power and the glory. God of salvation, unfold your story. Yours is the kingdom, the power and the glory. Amen. King of endless love, here on earth just as in heaven above, let your will be done. Wake our hearts and let your kingdom come. We are watching, we are waiting, we are hoping, we are praying, we're believing, let your kingdom come. Father in heaven, your name is holy, yours is the kingdom, the power and the glory. God of salvation, unfold your story. Yours is the kingdom, the power and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Hear the words of the poem. In Flanders fields the poppies blow between the crosses, row in row that mark our place. And in the sky the larks, still bravely singing, fly, scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead. Sure days ago we lived, felt dawn so sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you from failing hands we throw the torch. Be yours to hold it high. If you break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders fields. Amen.